Hey guys, me Mal today. So yeah, in today's video we'll be talking about the Saturday games for round 2 of Super Rugby Trans-Tasman. This means we'll be talking about the Blues versus Waratahs, the Chiefs versus Brumbies, and of course the Reds versus Crusaders. So yeah, starting off with Blues versus Wartars, this should be a very interesting game to watch, obviously, with the Blues coming back from an away victory against the Rebels last week. You could say a pretty convincing victory, to say the least. But yeah, the Blues got the job done there, so that's a good win for them. On the other hand, the Wartars, you could say, suffered a loss, but from a high-scoring loss at home against the Hurricanes. So they'll definitely want to be completely honest, the Wartars are in a situation where they've lost, but at the same time, they can gain a lot from that loss because they were pretty good in actually scoring a lot of tries. They just have to work on really the defense. So we'll have to wait and see if they can at least improve on that within this game. So yeah, here are the lineups, obviously, for both sides. I'll run them by you guys, tell you what I think about them, and yeah, I'll give a reaction afterwards. So the Blues are playing at home within Auckland, so they will have home advantage. But yeah, with that, they have Carl Tungafe as well as Offa Tungafasi, who's back within the lineup. So that's a pretty good prop pairing there for the Blues. But they will be facing the likes of Angus Bell as well as Harry Johnson home. So I think normally I would have said that's a draw between both sides because I actually really like the Waratahs props they have there. But I'm actually going to edge it towards the Blues just because I think the addition of Tungafasi back within the side is just very key. So moving on to the hooker, of course, you have the likes of Kurt Eklund as well as Poreski as for the Waratahs. I think straight away I'm going to give this to Kurt Eklund. I just think I've seen more of Kurt Eklund play, and he's scored a lot more tries than Poreski for the Waratahs. So for that reason, I'm going to edge it towards Kurt Eklund and the Blues within that position. So moving on to the locks. The locks is a very interesting one, obviously, with the likes of Gerald Toali as well as Josh Goodhue, who was brilliant at, if I can say the least, with them last week's game. And they'll be facing the likes of Sinclair as well as Max Douglas. So normally, it's a weird one because they don't actually have Patrick Tripolotto. Even though he's on the bench, it's good to see that he's actually kind of returning in that sense. Normally, I would have said this is a draw, but because Goodhue was so dominant, I'd say within last week's game, I'm going to edge it towards the Blues again within that position. So anyway, moving on to the last one, obviously within their forward pack is the loose forwards. With that 6-7-8 combination with Tom Robinson as the captain, of course, for the Blues, with Adrian Cho at 7, and then of course Akira Laoni at 8. They'll be facing the likes of Lachlan Swinton at 6, Charlie Gamble at 7, and of course William Harris at 8. So it's one of those where normally I would say this is a Blues win straight away, but I was actually very impressed by the Wartars loose forward pack within last week's game. And I think Lachlan Swinton is just he's a good player. He's obviously part of the Wallaby camp in that sense. So I think for that reason, I'm going to say that's a draw within that area. So we move on to the backs, obviously with that 9-10 combination for both sides. You do have the likes of Finlay Christie as well as Ontario Black for the Blues. So a pretty good combo there, and they're developing more chemistry within their position. So it's good to see that. But yeah, you do have the likes of Jake Gordon, who obviously is the captain for the Wartars in this game, and then you have Ben Donaldson, and he was actually good. To be fair to him, his kicking was actually on point, I'd say, throughout the whole game. He missed only some kicks, but he was on. For most of the tries they scored a lot of tries, so he did convert a lot, and he did pretty well from that position. So I think for the time being, I'm gonna say that's a draw, just due to the basis where I think both the Wartars players have a lot more experience than the likes of Finlay Christie and Ontario Black. But yeah, that could definitely change within an instant for sure. So we move on to the centres, of course, from both sides. This is probably going to be one of the key battles from the game with the likes of TJ Fani as well as Rico Laoni within those 2 centre spots for the Blues. But they will be facing the likes of, Whakatai as well as Parisi within those centre spots for the Wartars. So it's going to be a good battle in the sense where you're going to have a big man, 2 big men on both sides, as well as 2 speedsters, if you want to say the least. But yeah, I'm going to edge it towards the Blues again within this one. I just think that those 2 have a lot more chemistry together. And it's just more or less, I think they have a lot more balance when they play with each other. So yeah, anyway, moving on to the winner spots, obviously for the Blues, you do the likes of AJ Lamb as well as Brees Heem. And for the Wartars, you do the likes of James Turner and then Alex Newsom. So normally I would have gone with the Blues here because I think AJ Lamb, don't get me wrong, he's actually done very well so far within his Blues career. He's actually stepped up his game. And Brees Heem has done pretty well, I'd say, for his so far for the Blues, but I think I'm going to edge it towards the Wartars because I think Alex Newsom is just a dangerous winger, and he's going to be probably one of the key threats, I say, for the Wartars from that back line. And then obviously James Turner, I've seen a bit of him play, not too much. He's still a young product, if you want to say the least, but yeah, it should be a good combination there for sure. So we're moving on to the last position, obviously with that 15 spot. You do the likes of Zoran Sullivan and going against Jack Mallix, and Don't get me wrong. I mean, Zara Zonovan he's a good prospect player, and he does bring that long range kicking, which I'm happy about as a Blues fan. You know, we haven't had that in a long time. But again, I'm going to edge towards the Wartars just because I think Jack Mallis is just a complete player, really. I mean, besides the kicking, really, he has everything else. He's a great catcher of the ball. You know, he's lethal. He's a clinical try scorer. But yeah. Other than that, yeah, I think I'm going to go with the Wartars from that position. So yeah, that's kind of it with that, both those lineups. If I had to say who actually wins that game, I think I'm going to edge it towards the Blues, just going off last week's performance. But I think I'm going to say the Blues, this will be a closer game than what most people say. Because I think the Wartars will battle them out as they did last week against the Hurricanes. So I think for that reason, I think the Blues will only win this game by at least 5 points, in my opinion. So I'm going to say they'll win this game. I think it'll be high scoring again. So I'm going to say 30 points to 25. Yeah. 30 points to 25 is my final prediction for that game. So I'm going to move on to the next game, obviously, which is the Chiefs versus Brumbies. And this should be a good game to watch, obviously, with the Chiefs, you could say, scraping a win against the Western Force last week. So they were lucky to get their win over the line. But more or less, they will be facing the Brumbies side, who just almost drew with the reigning champions in New Zealand Crusaders. So it'll be one of those where it'll be interesting to see if the Brumbies can, bounce back from that. You could say last minute shock, but this will be a good battle. This will be definitely a close battle, and obviously Chiefs will have home advantage by playing within Hamilton, so they will have that to their say. But yeah, here are the lineups obviously for both sides. I'll run them by with you guys, tell you what I think about them, and yeah, I'll give my prediction afterwards. So with the Chiefs, you do the likes of Eden Ross as well as Mafaleo from those propping positions, but you do have the likes of Scott Seo and Alatoa from those, and obviously Alatoa is the captain for the Brumbies. And I think for that reason, I'm going to edge it towards the Brumbies just because they have a lot more experience within that position. So we move on to the hooker one. Normally I actually would have given this to the Brumbies with the likes of Flauwafanga, but of course he's not playing with the likes of Lachlan Lonergan replacing him for this game, and he'll be facing the likes of Takaleho. And yeah, I think for that reason, I'm going to go with Takaleho. I mean, he's just been brilliant for the Chiefs throughout this whole Super Rugby Ultra season this year, and I think he's really stepped up his game. So yeah, I'm going to say he wins that battle for sure. Yeah, so for the lock positions, you do have the likes of Josh Lord as well as Tubo Valai for the Chiefs, but they will be facing the likes of Nick Frost as well as Darcy Swine. So it's going to be a close battle, but I think I'm going to edge it towards the Brumbies within that selection, only because they have a lot. I'm going to say a lot more chemistry, I'd say, within those two players. Besides the likes of, when you look at Lord and Valai, I don't really see that much chemistry. I think Valai and Al-Kui have a lot more. So for that reason, I'm going to edge it towards the Brumbies. So we moved on to the loose forward pack for both sides. You do have the likes of Liam Neeson filling in that 6 role, so that's great to see. An old timer there back in the starting team against the Brumbies, so it'll be good to see how he does. But more or less, his partner in crimes will be Lachlan Boshier at 7, and of course Luke Jacobson at 8. So it should be a good loose forward share there for the Chiefs. But they will be facing the likes of Henry Stowers at 6, as well as Rory Scott, and of course Rob Valentini at 8. And Rob Valentini was just a force to be reckoned with within last week's game against the Crusaders. And I think for that reason, I'm going to edge it towards a draw. I think a draw is pretty fair to say. If maybe if Peter Gus was in the Chiefs lineup, maybe I would have given it to the Chiefs. But for that reason, I'm going to say it's a draw. So anyway, moving on to the backs for both sides. With the 9-10 combinations for the Chiefs, you do have the likes of Brad Weber, who of course is the captain for the Chiefs, and there's Damien McKenzie actually in that 10 spot. So that's an interesting one to see. Him going from the 15 last week to 10. So we'll see how he does within that position. They will be facing the likes of Ryan Lonergan as well as Noah Laseo. So normally I would have actually given this to the Brumbies. I think Noah Laseo has done very well for the Brumbies recently, and he's just stepping up his game slowly, and he's, in my eyes, he's looking like definitely a Wallabies 10 or maybe 12. We'll have to wait and see how he does. But I think for now I'm going to give it to the Chiefs just because they have Weber and McKenzie, which is a more dominant, I'd say, combo in that sense. So now moving on to the centres, obviously for both sides, you do have the likes of Alex Langeveld as well as Anton Around for the Chiefs, but they will be facing the likes of Israel Simone as well as Ikatal. So this, it's a tough one. I think I would have given it to the Brumbies. I would have given it to the Brumbies by looking at last season's Super Rugby AU comp, but I think for this season, I think I'm going to edge it towards the Chiefs just because I think Alex Newsom's done very well for the Chiefs, and he's probably been their standout player in my opinion. He's been, in my eyes, I actually think he's in the better Super Rugby Ultra season than Anton Brown, but yeah, for that reason I'm going to edge it towards those two. But anyway, moving on to the wingers, obviously for both sides, you do have the likes of John Lowe at the 11th spot, and then you have the likes of Brain Sullivan actually coming into the side at 14, so we're going to see how he does. But for the Brumbies, you do the likes of Tom Wright at 11, and of course Samakolo Kata at 14. So I think for that reason, I'm going to go with those two for the Brumbies. I just think they have a lot more consistency when they play together. And like I always say, Tom Wright always gives you a 7 out of 10 performance. So yeah, for that reason, the Brumbies win that position battle. So yeah, for the last one, obviously, with that 15 spot, you do the likes of Chase Tiatia versus the likes of Tom Banks. So this should be a very good battle in that sense, because both players, I say, are, I'm not going to say the same quality, but they're very similar in the way that they play. But yeah, I think I'm going to edge it towards Tom Banks, because I think he has a lot more to bring towards the Brumbies side than what Chase Tiatia has towards the Chiefs. So for that reason, I'm going to edge it towards Tom Banks. So anyway, that's kind of it with those lineups. If I had to say who actually wins that game, I'm actually going to say the Brumbies will actually get a win here. I think they'll get the first Australian win for the Australian sides. I think they'll sneak it over the line, in my opinion. I think they'll win it within the last 10 minutes. So I think they'll win this game by 2 points. So I'll say they'll win this. I think it'll be a low scoring game. So I'll say 25 points to 23. Yeah, 25 points to 23 is my final prediction for that game towards the Brumbies. So anyway, moving on to the last game, obviously, and that's against the Reds and Crusaders. This is probably, you could say, the big match of this weekend, and yeah, probably the one I'm going to be most excited to watch. Obviously, both sides did finish first within their respective comps, within Super Waratahs as well as AU, so we'll see how they both do. The Crusaders, you could say, scraped a win against the Brumbies last week, and the Reds really just didn't look like they really were against the Highlanders. They're just off form, if you want to say the least. So yeah, it should be interesting to see how both sides play. But the Reds do have home advantage, so that should come into their favour, but more or less, it's always going to be a good battle against the Crusaders. So here on the sides, obviously for both sides, I run them by with you guys, tell you what I think about them, and yeah, I'll give my prediction afterwards. So with the Reds, obviously, you do have the likes of Dan Sander as well as Teniano Tubo coming back into the side, so it's good to see that combination back. Probably their best prop combination in my opinion, so it's good to see that coming back into full tuition. But yeah, for the Crusaders, you do have the likes of George Bauer as well as Ollie Jaeger. So Ollie Jaeger is actually replacing Michael Alatoa for this game. Obviously he's on the bench, but I would have gone with the Crusaders within that position, but because they haven't gone with the strongest lineup within those prop positions, I'm actually going to edge it towards the Reds for that one. So then moving on to the hooker, obviously, you do the likes of Brendan Pengamosa for the Reds, he's done brilliantly, to say the least, for the Reds throughout Super AAU, but I think I just have to give it to Cody Taylor. I mean, he's been brilliant for them. Obviously, he's the captain, of course, for that. For the Crusaders, so it should be good to see how he does. He'll probably get a try to his name, to be frank. Obviously, not getting a try last week, so I can definitely see him getting a try or two. Yeah, for that reason, I'm going to edge it towards Cody Taylor. So moving on to the locks, obviously for both sides, you do have the likes of Ryan Smith as well as Lachlan Sakai Loto. Pretty good combination there. I mean, I would have preferred Angus Bliff, to be fair, but I do like that combination with Smith and Sakai Loto. But they will be facing the likes of Mitchell Dunshea as well as Simon Whitelock. And even though it's not their strongest combination, I'm still going to actually stick with that one because I think Simon Whitelock's presence within that lineup, he'll disrupt, he'll get a lot of lineup stills in my opinion. So for that reason, I'm going to edge it towards the Crusaders. So then moving on to the next one, obviously with that loose forward pack, you do the likes of Liam Wright, Fraser McRae, as well as Harry Wilson making up that loose forward trio for the Reds. But you do have the likes of Y2 Douglas at 6, Ethan Butler at 7, and Cullen Grace at 8. So it's going to be a very, very good battle, in my opinion. I'd say probably the best battle between Australia and New Zealand, in my opinion, towards loose forwards, you could say. Maybe the Blues, actually, when I think about it. But I think I'm going to edge it towards the Reds, just because in my opinion, if you're going to have player off player, I think Liam Wright beats Y2 Douglas. I'd say Cullen Grace beats Harry Wilson. But I think I prefer Fraser McRae over Ethan Blattler at this point in time. But that could change definitely throughout the course of this tournament. So yeah, anyway, moving on to the backs, obviously with that 9-10 combination, you do have the likes of Tate McDermott coming back into the side, so that's a very good addition to the side and definitely will improve them for sure. Obviously, he'll be combining with James O'Connor, who is the captain, of course, for the Reds, but they will be facing the likes of Mitchell Drummond and Richie Mo'unga. So it's going to be, in my opinion, these are probably the two best combos. So I think for the time being, normally I would have said the Crusaders straight away, but I'm actually going to say that's just a draw, because I think I've been very impressed by James O'Connor recently. So he was unlucky only to play a half from last week, but I think I'm still going to give him that respect in that sense. So I'm going to say that's a draw for that battle. So moving on to the centres, obviously for both sides, you do the likes of Hamish Stewart as well as Hunter Basami coming back for the Reds, so it's a good addition there. But they will be facing the likes of David Havili and Brennan Enor. So for that reason, I think I'm going to edge towards Crusaders. I just think that combination of Havili and Eno is just too ridiculous not to resist, really. So, yeah, I have to edge towards Crusaders within that. They provide different attributes as well, so it's kind of good to have as well. So then moving on to the wingers, of course, for both sides. You do the likes of Jock Campbell as well as Vanavalu, who's obviously starting now for the Reds, so it's good to see that combination. It should be interesting to see if he gets a try or two, like he did last week. But yeah, they will be facing the likes of Lester Fanianko, of course, and Sever Reese. So I think for that reason, I'm going to have to edge towards Crusaders again. I don't think that backline is too ridiculous not to, exclude. So yeah, I have to go towards Crusaders from within those winger spots. But anyway, well, for the last position, obviously, you do have the likes of Bryce Hegarty going against Will Jordan for the Crusaders. And yeah, I think this is an easy selection in my opinion. I think Will Jordan wins that battle any other day. He's just so good in breaking defenses and finding clean breaks. But yeah, more or less, Will Jordan wins that battle for sure. But anyway, that's kind of it with that lineup. About to say who actually wins that game. I think I'm going to edge it towards the Crusaders, but I think it's going to be very, very close. I'm actually going to say they'll only win this by 1 point. I think they'll only win this by 1 point. So I think it'll be a low-scoring game. So I'm going to say this game will only be by, 20 points to 19 towards the Crusaders. Yeah, 20 points to 19 is my final prediction for that game. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of it with the video today. Just hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely comment below to let me know who you guys think will win. But other than that, just hope you guys have a good day. And yeah, talk to you guys soon.